Hello, Albuquerque.
In those days, it was 41, so there was a lot of racism.
I'm a Boeing 737 first officer.
I did a lot of research and I recommend everyone do the same.
And now suddenly you're addicted, literally to heroin.
Where were you born? I was born in Cambridge, England.
Both my parents were drug addicts.
Welcome to another episode. I'm your host, James Graves Brown, and joined today by another special guest, as always. Today my guest is Jordan Brenner. Jordan, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time and coming down here to do this with me.
Thanks for having me, James.
No, I appreciate it. So I always start these things by talking about how I know you, and I know Jordan because Jordan is my boss. I don't necessarily see you as a boss, though I do see you as a very prominent authority figure. You have a very respect-demanding presence, and it's freaking crazy. I'm going to have to apologize up front because of my dirty mouth. You know, I have a potty mouth, so... but you're fucking very intimidating as far as, like, being a young man goes. And not in a authoritarian way. You're just you present yourself much older than you really are. Where did that come from?
I think I just start off by explaining that part of that's driven by my worldview and the way that I perceive life in the world and the way that we were all created. All human beings are equal in dignity and worth. I'm a Christian, and that it influences a lot of that perspective.
Okay.
So from that, regardless of what people do or believe, they are inherently equal in dignity and worth, and we owe each other respect for that purpose alone.
Very good answer.
Extends beyond that, of course, but starts there.
Well, and as far as, like, I don't know, when you think of somebody as your boss, there's a couple different kind of people, and I would say when I was a boss or a leader, if you will, I had sort of an opposite approach to things where I was very, like, buddy with people, though I did have a similar approach to getting things done where I would ask rather than bark out orders, and I find that you do that a lot too. But I don't know how I guess I look at you and your dad as equals. Jordan's dad, by the way, is also one of our bosses where I work, and also a really good guy. Very authoritarian as well. Demands respect, but commands respect, but doesn't demand it. If that makes any sense. Did some of that rub off on you, as far as from a managerial standpoint, and the way you, I don't know, you just have like a really different presence to yourself. But similar to your dad.
Yeah, it'd be impossible to separate those variables to tell for sure. I mean, I can't say, but I'm inclined to think yes to some degree. I admire him, and there are ways in which, I learned a lot from him and want to emulate some of the things he's taught me.
Sure. And I will say that the man taught you well, because you've got and we'll get into that later, but you've got this passion for vehicles, and great vehicles at that. Like, I can't say that most people who are car enthusiasts tend to swing their passion towards Mustangs and, the typical vehicles, and not even like classics. If it's classics, I can understand, but, somebody talking about a 99 Mustang, I'm like, that's sure, okay. that's not there's not a million of those out on the road or anything. But yeah, your dad is I can see a lot of your dad in you. Even though I don't know the guy, I feel like I know him a lot more because of how much I know you. Sure. And you guys very much reflect each other. To that note, tell me about your background. Like, how were you raised? What I guess ethics did your dad instill in you, and what things did you do as a child with your dad?
I was born in South Carolina. My parents both grew up in Roswell, New Mexico. And when went to school and got college degrees from a school called Bob Jones University in South Carolina.
Okay.
And anyway, they stayed there. They really enjoyed that part of the country and stayed there until They lived in South Carolina until I was about 8, and then moved back to New Mexico. They, from their experience growing up, they had the opportunity to visit Santa Fe from Roswell quite often and really loved it. And so when they moved back home, as they describe it, they wanted to move to Santa Fe. And so for me, I describe, Santa Fe or New Mexico as my home, where I'm from. But and there's some cultural shaping that I think occurs just from the values we have in New Mexico, especially, and Santa Fe being unique among the pretty diverse range of cities and cultures we have in New Mexico. Yeah. But that's kind of an experience, and to the degree anyone is shaped by a culture, you can't separate those variables either. I think a lot of when I think about identity is driven mostly by my faith, but then also my corporate identity with my family. That's that's more where it comes from. I feel very close with my family. I have 3 younger brothers.
Okay.
And so there's kind of some.
I'm sorry. You're the oldest?
I am the oldest.
Huh. Interesting.
Oldest of 4 boys.
So am I.
And part of that experience growing up was, that was formative for sure. And my parents definitely placed an emphasis on me setting an example and leading my brothers.
Of course.
Instilled early on this understanding of not just making decisions based on understanding what's right and wrong, but making decisions not only for my own sake, but as a person, just setting that example.
Okay.
So that drives a lot of my decisions today.
Makes sense. Now that you say that, I'd like to explore that a little bit, if that's okay. I'm also the oldest of 4 boys, and I want to know if your sort of experience as the oldest is anything like mine, where as things happened with me in life, my mom was very restrictive and very protective, and you can't go out and do this and that. But as time trickled on and it got to the youngest brother, that brother had the freedom of whatever. They're I don't care, go do whatever you want.
Right.
Is that similar with you?
Oh yeah, I mean the things that I watched my youngest brother is 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
10 years in a day.
Wow,
I
that's
watch him doing stuff that I just think man, if I had done that when I was his age, I would have gotten smacked in the next week.
I hear you.
A very different experience for him, and it's hard not to shake my head at that.
No, I hear you. Did any of your brothers turn out similar to you and your dad?
Yeah, I would say from personality wise, my second, my closest in age brother, his name's Jake. He's most like my dad in terms of personality.
Wow.
They tend to be a little bit more of drivers.
That's great.
Yeah, a little biased more towards action and right and wrong than opposed to maybe empathy. Empathy first. I would describe myself as I start from a place of empathy. So when it comes to interactions in life, whether that's with my family or with my 2 kids specifically, or at work, my first response is often one of empathizing with a person, and then having to the correction or the discipline. So providing that discipline or that structure is something is important, and I know it's important, but it takes more effort for me than opposed to somebody like others in my family who their first response is boots and backsides, and empathy is the effort. Right.
You hide that very well.
There's growing there that I'm working on.
No, you're great at doing what you do. Another similarity I find in myself and you is the place of empathy, and I think that's why we get along so well.
Yeah.
I find myself going frequently throughout the day when I have downtime to go see what you're doing and just chat, because maybe because I find so many similarities in the 2 of us. And again, you are that authority figure, mm-hmm. but you're also a good friend, and it's easy to separate those 2. It's not that's
sure. There's
no blurred lines there for me. I know when business is business, where my place is and where your place is, as opposed to if I'm going to go chat with you, where
Yeah, I prefer to be shoulder to shoulder with everyone I work with.
No, I get that, but
and really, I think what's been helpful for me is to when it comes to work, really focusing on having a model of, it's not about me or my own ego, though I know I need to keep that in check. That's just something about me. But there's roles, and I've been assigned to a role, and so I just try to understand where my role fits in with the organization and with the situation, and then from there, everyone I work with, I want them to fall into the roles, and we can put emotions to the sideline for the moment. But I understand that when crisis is settled, we have relationships that are really important to manage. So you can make decisions in the moment of a crisis where you can really destroy those relationships quickly. And so I think it's really important to conduct oneself in a way that you can do both, right? You can resolve the situation. I have a role, and in this case, I have these responsibilities, and if that means I need to tell you or somebody else, you need to do this thing, I'm expecting you to fall into the responsibilities and the role you have.
Right.
And then when we're all said and done, we want to be friends, and if we need to mend relationships, then that's something we need to do.
Well, and there's something to be said for people taking pride in their work. So when you're telling people you need to do this, well, it shouldn't be a big deal. So, of course, nowadays people are really entitled and have opinions on how the world should be run, I guess you can say. But I feel like we have a good staff, all said and done.
Yeah, I agree.
And you have a fantastic approach to that whole situation. I feel like people who were in your position before you, they had a long way to go before they got to a place where there was a mutual respect. And you sort of, when I first met you, I was like, great, another guy. Like, now we have to deal with this guy and find his quirks. And
some young guy trying to get his way to the top.
Yeah, well, and then the fact that I knew your dad was an authority figure already, I was like, oh yeah, this guy probably just, moseyed in because of who his dad is. And no, then when I met you, like, instantly my mind was changed. I was like, okay, I was prejudging, and that was so wrong. Like, my bad. Okay, tell me about your college experience.
Yeah, college experience is interesting. There's some lessons learned there I could share.
Please.
So this may be important. I was homeschooled all the way through high school.
No kidding. Mm-hmm. Wow, how was that?
It was the experience I have. It just kind of is what it is. I find myself probably in college trying to compensate for some of the closeness of relationships, like on a daily basis, that I didn't get because I was homeschooled. When I started my junior year of high school, I started taking some, at the time, like pre-college courses, but then college courses at the local community college in Santa Fe.
Okay.
And that was good. Eventually graduated with about 33 credit hours. And anyway, I was given the opportunity for a full ride scholarship.
Sweet.
It was a merit-based, not academic, but merit-based scholarship. So I started at University of Colorado. In Colorado Springs, they have a few different campuses. This is the Colorado Springs campus.
Okay.
Really cool. It was a lot of fun. It was also a lot of work, studying engineering. Anyway, the academics associated with the requirements of that merit-based scholarship were not something that I was ready for, and so I had to kind of learn how to teach myself how to study. It's just kind of a different experience, the whole homework thing and buckling down, and it was just also very academically rigorous courses. Small fish in a big pond in that particular environment. Most of the classes I was taking, I was one student among between 90 and 100 students in this big lecture hall, and that was not an experience I'd had before.
Right.
So anyway, fast forward about 2.5 years after I started, that merit-based scholarship was rescinded, and I had to find a new place to go. And anyway, I had the opportunity to go to a new school, so I transferred to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. Still studying engineering. Not all the credits transferred, and had a little bit of work to do, but all said and done, I graduated about 5 years after I started college, with a degree in Bachelor of Science in Engineering from Fort Lewis College. But that was a really great experience, and
that's awesome.
I'm really just very encouraged by that program. That was most of the upper classes. Like, biggest class was like maybe 40 students. Most of the classes I was taking was with not a TA, not a grad student, but like a PhD, teaching the course with most of the case industry experience, 20-person classrooms, and that was, I think there's something to be said about feeling like a bigger fish in a small pond.
Right.
I didn't fit in the bigger school, but the smaller school seemed to fit me a lot better. And
Well, I mean, coming from a background of homeschool, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I think I just observe about myself that I tend to be motivated by relationships, and the inability to have relationships with people teaching me the material in the larger school was
That makes sense.
not that they had to, but that was motivating for me. And when I didn't have that, it was really hard to get some of that value.
That's it. So it's a couple things about the homeschooling. It's really weird that you say that because, and I sort of feel really bad about this now, but in junior high school, we had a girl who transferred into school. It was, I don't know, early 8th grade, I think. Yeah, early 8th grade. And she was homeschooled, and she didn't understand social cues. She was very, very awkward, but incredibly smart, almost too smart to understand. She was on a whole nother plane than the rest of us, and she would use these big words, and I was just like, what is wrong with this person? This is so fucking weird. What?
Yeah.
I don't get this. But
I can tell you more about that if you're interested. But
absolutely. But looking back on that now, I probably misjudged her, and I'm sure she's a fucking awesome person based on your personality and your intelligence. And I feel like maybe there's something to that homeschooling, because from my own experience going to public schools, I first of all did not ever do homework. I didn't believe in it. I learned shit, no problem. They could sit me down and give me a test, and I'd ace it every freaking time, no freaking problem. I didn't even have to know the material, and I can basically wing my way through it and get a passing grade. So I always felt that homework was bullshit, and I never did it. And
I still do.
part of that, I think, for me was I think that it was not only a waste of time, but I'm at school for a reason. That's where I want to do my work for school. I don't want to take that home with me. I got too much shit going on. And beyond that, if I know the material, why does homework matter?
Seriously.
And I can sit in front of you and write the problems out and show you that I know the stuff. So why does any of this other stuff matter? Isn't the important part learning? Anyway, real quick, were your brothers also homeschool?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so tell me about the homeschool experience.
I think, none of them were ever placed in a public school or a private school or otherwise. Some of them did some community college courses as well, and some of them found that wasn't a good fit for them. But
okay.
Anyway, my experience, I think the middle school, high school years were probably the most important ones. In terms of the academic work, it was on par with the rigor that I would experience elsewhere. The content was significantly different. Most of the arts and humanities were based on reading literature, whether that was reading textbooks or reading historic fiction or some other book based on that kind of introduces you to the topics.
Sure.
A lot of classics. But I think what the value in that is I got an opportunity to read some about the history or art or culture or an area of history where that was really interesting, and then back it up with information in textbooks for some of the details that they skip over in a narrative presentation of the topics. That was really cool, and because of that, I also had a really high reading comprehension and vocabulary exiting high school, which served me well.
Oh yeah.
That was cool. I think, but the middle school, high school stuff that I think was really most helpful was I got to skip on a lot of the competitive hierarchy and pecking order that kind of gets developed in high school. People are learning to become adults and interact with each other, and when some of that is a desire to, they're in an uncomfortable place and there's anxiety and the rest.
Trying to fit
their
in.
Bodies are doing things they don't understand.
Yep.
There's hormones going crazy.
Right.
And rather than competing with each other, you had to find other outlets.
Okay.
I fought with my brothers a lot.
So did I.
A lot, but as far as that goes, but I was also interacting. Most of the interaction I was having with other people was either other homeschoolers or adults, mostly adults, and so that I think was really helpful to learn at a formative age how to interact with adults and to assemble arguments and argue and. I didn't mean fight. I mean
No, debate.
Mathematically speaking,
Sure.
You assemble an argument and you have to prove that it's true.
Sure.
So that was, I think, very helpful and an experience that really helped me actually throughout college and helps me today. It was very very valuable to me, and I really appreciated the art. I think the literature and the other way to approach those subjects, because I think it just helped me get a little more passionate about it, and I have a desire to learn about those things. And exactly the way you're describing, if I could finish all my homework by 3 in the afternoon and didn't have anything else to do, that was fantastic. But that was something I had to get adjusted to.
Well,
Going into a public setting where it's like, well, we gotta, I don't know. There it is.
homeschool would suck because homework is also part of homeschool. You're already at home, so it's not like you have to take this work home and go do it at home. You're already there.
Right.
That
There's
sucks.
also like the whole behavioral thing. Like if you're cutting around in class, like, or you're not doing your homework the way you're supposed to, your teacher in a public school setting may send a note home to your parents or tell them,
Right.
and they may or may not do something about it. And what I observe is it seems that in a lot of cases, teachers tend to side with their kids instead of
course,
agreeing with the teacher,
Oh,
and then the teacher becomes like this third party adversary, and they like defend the kid. Where I didn't have an opportunity for that experience. If I didn't do what I was supposed to, it was not just I didn't do what I was supposed to, and there was consequences, but like there was moral consequences that came with that.
Sure.
And correction. So that I just didn't get much slack,
Well, and
which I think is good.
yeah.
Not fun at the time, but
Well, I mean, the outcome is proof of that. So
for sure.
I think that
And for sure, like if I were to say any last thing on like homeschooling, I'm very thankful that my mom made that sacrifice to do that.
yeah, that can't be easier on her either.
Yeah, I mean, just my wife and I both work, and we have 2 kids, and they're not school age. Our older child is 4, and she's preschool age. But I understand now, I have a better sense now for the sacrifice that would be to do that kind of thing, and I appreciate what she did.
Does your wife work where we work?
She works for a different part of the laboratory. She works.
Okay.
She does software configuration for the Acquisition Services Management Division.
That's already more than I can comprehend. That title is more than I can comprehend.
There's a lot of frustrations with that division because they're responsible for enforcing the federal government's rules on how we buy stuff.
Oh shit!
We're spending
Okay.
taxpayer dollars.
Right.
There's a lot of laws in place that hold the government accountable and make sure that we're not abusing taxpayer funding.
As it should be.
And their responsibility is to make sure that we're compliant. And if they have to choose between being compliant and getting things done, they are forced to choose compliance.
Sure.
And that leads everybody else who wants to get their job done, themselves included, frustrated because they can't get our work done.
Well, politics and semantics. there's a lot to be said there.
Yeah, I want to frame that argument in that way, but
Sure.
generally speaking, a lot of people get frustrated with ASM just because they don't understand the hard situation that they're kind of put in. Sometimes it looks like they're just being difficult because they're being difficult.
Going back to the homeschool topic, sorry, I just kind of flew into my head and I wanted to ask. I think that it would have been beneficial for people like me because I spent a lot of my time in those social circles trying to fit in, trying to make friends, chasing girls. Like, I didn't have a lot of focus for schoolwork, although, I was good at it. I'm not like the smartest person. I'm not real intelligent, but, you teach me some basic shit, and if I see you do it, I can do it. Sure. That's what it comes down to. But I would probably fail miserably at homeschool because I can't read for shit. Like, I can read, but I don't retain knowledge that way. I can't process it that way. I have to see it done or do it manually with hands on, and that's how I learn things. So to hear you talk about reading so many books and all that stuff like that, I mean, when I was young, it was no problem, but if I'm not immediately enthralled or fascinated with the topic, I'm not going to retain a single word from those pages. It's going to go in one eye and out the other, so to speak.
Don't hear what I'm not saying here. There are certainly books that I had to read that I did not care for, and you learn how to scan through them to answer the questions that you're supposed to answer.
Oh yeah.
You learn how to get through it too. So I didn't enjoy everything that I read.
Okay.
So
to that note, what's your favorite subject?
Probably literature. I had the opportunity. I got to the last semester of my senior year. I was 1 credit hour away from meeting my arts and humanities requirement. I think it was like a transfer thing, and the credits that did not transfer, and that was frustrating. But I was like, okay, well, I have to have something. So I had the opportunity to take a course called 1800 1800s to 1900s British literature, and some of it was like kind of archaic and not super fun, but some of it was really good, and that was really enjoyable.
Cool.
A lot of poetry, and had to read The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which I hadn't previously had an opportunity to read, and that was kind of a slog, but it was enjoyable.
Wow.
I mean, to the degree I studied engineering, so like, in terms of studying something you're going to enjoy, like I didn't get into that because I thought I'm just going to enjoy engineering. I got into it because I thought this is good for me.
For your future.
Yeah, just that I have some proclivity to this topic, and I think I would use these skills well, but getting those skills is painful, so just force myself to study.
Well, now as part of your future, which is now your present time, I'm curious, does ego play into your leadership role at all?
Of course, I'm a human.
Well, yeah, but how much does it play into that? Does that like drive you at all, and do you have to find yourself like trying to stop your ego and focus on a different approach to things, or?
Yeah. Yes. I find I spend a lot of time pondering why I'm driven towards a specific thing and try to make decisions for career decisions, especially make those decisions for the right reasons. Going back to like my Christian faith, it really comes down to where I'm looking for identity and fulfillment. And that is the helpful framework that I've used to help understand why I make this. I'm not saying that I make great decisions all the time. Sometimes I make the right decisions for the wrong reasons, and sometimes I just make bad decisions. But yeah, I mean, when I think about it, what I try to remind myself is that it's not healthy to find fulfillment in career, because you can't. It's just a bad place to find fulfillment. Things go bad. Sometimes you just have bad days at work. And if your identity is if your identity and your sense of fulfillment is tied to a factor that you have little to no control over, when that goes badly, I'm doing badly, or when it's going well, I'm doing well. But to take pride in something like that is not something I can really take pride and have control over, and that just doesn't go well.
It's very interesting.
That said, I still make decisions sometimes that are based on bad things. I like the way that doing a certain thing or being in a certain position says about me, and so I'm attracted towards that scenario, and I just have to remind myself that there's no life in that.
That's really interesting, but to a degree, isn't that something you should strive to take fulfillment from? Like, yeah. And your work.
I think this is maybe on the same line of what you're suggesting with success, maybe to use different terms. I think I've been given a set of skills, and some of those skills are like leadership and discernment. I think I've used empathy to my success or my advantage, not in a way that I'm manipulating other people, but in a way that seems to meet a need that many people have. So that said, the leadership positions I find myself in, I think, are well aligned with skills that I have developed. And so, oftentimes when I think about why I want to take on a leadership position, it's partly because I have these skills, and that's a good way for me to leverage skills I have. That doesn't mean that I don't also have an ego about it sometimes, and so
that's fair.
Not to overuse this metaphor, but it's hard to separate some of those variables and understand. There's no scientific method here. There's no control.
comes with the territory, so it's
for sure,
but not always in your control. And I've said this before, I'm fucking glad that you took that position, because we haven't, as from my experience, and this is going back to when I worked there previously in 2010. There hasn't been somebody in that position who maybe deserved it is a good word, or did it right. Like I'm always saying, the right tools for the job. You can get a job done with a screwdriver, but maybe a wrench would be a better option. So we're finally getting all of our staff into place, and they are the correct tools for this job, and I feel very confident that we're on the right track for our best life at work right now. So
yeah, I have an idea in my head of ways we can continue to build that and make that happen.
Well, it's working.
I mean, we're talking about this kind of high level and somewhat vaguely, and that's okay. But my thought would be that we want to make sure I don't have to be the one making the decisions about what it looks like, as long as the right environment's in place.
And the outcome is correct.
Right. So if you and your peers, all the staff can do what they can to ask for the right things and get the tools that you think you need to do the job, and you have the freedom to do so, there's a psychological safety in place where you guys can ask for the things without fear of retaliation or repercussion. Like, that's the kind of environment, mutually respectful. You guys trust your management to give you the tools that you need to do your job, and as long as that takes place, like, that's something I feel a responsibility to provide.
Well, and going back to what I said, you're probably the first person who's created that environment. Most of us did not want to talk to management, and I'll tell you off air this thing, but I'll say some guys who have been there a really long time have this mindset that I don't want to be around the boss, period. I don't care how cool that boss is. I just don't want to be around him. And okay, so to be fair, I view you as a leader rather than a boss. I don't like the word boss. Boss is like barking out orders, whereas leader is like, let me get in the trenches with you and let's go figure this out. And I view you that way. But some of the guys, even though they like you as a person and they would totally hang out with you if that was something was the situation called for it, I guess. But because you're the boss, they try to avoid you at all costs. Just because you're the boss, it has nothing to do with you or your leadership qualities or anything. It's a really weird dynamic.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, and I'm not. I don't think I'm offended by that.
Well, you shouldn't be, because this was something instilled in them from past leadership who was in your position, and that's exactly what I'm pointing to, is that you've created this new thing where it's comfortable to go talk to the boss and say hi and let's have a conversation about work or whatever. Like, that's something they don't know, and because they're set in their ways, they're older, they've been there a long time, it's not going to change.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with that. They're
right. Yeah.
Everybody there is comfortable talking to you need be. They just on a more personal choice, they're gonna avoid you at all costs.
Yeah, I'm not. We have work to do. There's a long way to go. We're not there yet.
Sure.
I think one metric could be if any of those guys you're referring to are having a bad time at work because of an experience they have, whether that being something they don't like about their job or tools that they can't get, and there's a reason. I'm assuming there'd be a reason we would change that. We could, but if they're having a bad time at work, it's because they're not telling me about a problem they're having, and it's their own fault.
Oh, absolutely.
So if they're having a bad time, they could change it, and they're just choosing not to. And if that's the case, I can't do anything about that.
Right. Can't do it if you don't know. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's anything like that. It's just like they don't want to blur that line. They don't want to allow that line to be blurred where you're the boss and a friend. They just nope. We're at work. He's the boss. Outside of work, he can be a friend. But whatever. It is what it is. Let's move on. I want to know about. Okay, so in regular school, you have your regular curriculum, and then you have alternate classes. I guess you have extracurricular activities. You have what are those? Electives. What did that look like for homeschool?
That was it was kind of different. We had some ability to choose some electives. There's actually quite a bit of homeschoolers in Santa Fe, especially. Like, New Mexico as a whole has got just a higher than normal percentage of homeschoolers, but
no kidding.
Santa Fe especially. And so I had the opportunity to grow up with peers, kind of some older, but mostly young, like my age and younger kids. It's part of a homeschool group, and so other families in Santa Fe who were part of this homeschool group would get together, and like I had a PE class weekly.
Oh wow.
That, it was weekly, not like every day, but it was a weekly class where we'd spend several hours like learning how to play basketball or tennis or football or whatever else, and getting some exercise. And there's learned ballroom dancing at one point in time. Was kind of forced into that, but I've since enjoyed it. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
enjoy
awesome.
ballroom dancing, but get that experience from a young age. But that was kind of an interesting thing, and but that was kind of like the team sports. Maybe that's part of the reason I haven't really picked up a lot of team sports. My parents, I didn't grow up with any professional sports teams or ball sports. Didn't do a whole lot of that. Didn't watch any of that on on television or anything like that. We did grow up skiing. I did a lot of downhill skiing, and gotten to really enjoy that, and now share that with my family.
Cool.
Then also mountain biking is something I've gotten into and just have really enjoyed. But that started when I was about. I've been skiing since I was 8 years old, but I've been mountain biking since I was about 16.
Nice. I have a really weird relationship with sports because when I was younger, my dad's always been into sports, and my little brothers all played sports, and I even did for a stint in junior high and high school, and I was fascinated with watching it on TV and all that stuff. I was never really huge on football, but basketball I was like obsessed with for a while, and baseball, I collected baseball cards and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I did hockey for a little bit, but about the time that I got interested in cars, I completely lost interest in sports.
Yeah.
Like there was not enough room in my head for both. So I was like, cars are way cooler. And I haven't sat through a professional sports game on TV or anything like that. Now there's something to be said for the in-person experience, because we'll go to the Dukes games every now and then, or what are the Isotopes now games every now and then, but as far as watching it on TV or being a fan, I find it like a big waste of brain space. I don't want to remember all these statistics and sports and people's names. I don't care. I'd rather learn about cars.
For sure. Yeah, one of the things I got to do around high school age, my dad was always kind of been into cars. As far as I remember, has always had like at least one kind of cool car.
Yeah.
Growing up, he had an '84 Jeep Scrambler, which, if you know what that is, it's just it's a long bed Jeep truck kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Yes, I do.
Based on the Wrangler platform.
Yes.
Anyway, very cool. Still has it. My brother, he gave it to my brother at this point.
Nice.
He's got it built up. And anyway, that's cool.
That is cool.
He's had he's had a 2003 GTI, and I think an 80,000 miles timing belt slip. Blew the motor.
Oh.
And anyway, he rebuilt it himself, or he bought a new motor from some place where they just took the wiring harness and chopped it.
Oh, nice.
And so he installed it and rewired the entire thing himself. And I kind of learned about cars just by watching him and helping him with that.
That's awesome. And
that was really cool. But anyway, in high school, he had the opportunity to take us to a few. There used to be this European sports car racing series called American Le Mans Series Racing.
Cool.
So like the European Le Mans Series Racing, it's multi-class sports car racing with prototypes as well. 4 classes of cars, but there was an American version of the circuit at the time. They would go have races all over the place, but in high school I got to go with him and 1 and 2 of my brothers to 3 different races, 2 of them up at this racetrack in Tooele, Utah, which is kind of outside Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And then 1 race in Laguna Seca, which was just so cool, so much fun.
That's way cool.
And from there, I was basically hooked on cars.
That's freaking awesome. What age was that?
I don't know. It started when I was maybe 12, kind of getting into it.
Sweet.
He'd watch races from time to time, and I was really interested just hearing him talk about it. And what I think is really cool about it is just the engineering that goes into all of that stuff. He had kind of his own story. My grandfather was he's a surgeon, a general surgeon. My grandfather's got a crazy story. My grandfather on my dad's side, I guess one point in time he had a little Hot Wheel Porsche 911 that he sat on his desk, and my dad kind of grew up just always thinking that was the little coolest car, and always kind of wanted one and got into that. But anyway, when my dad turned 40, kind of had his own midlife crisis and bought himself a 1971 911. I mean, the floor pan's rusted out. It's not anything to, it's not anything to get put in a catalog by any stretch of the imagination. But it's cool, and it was his, right?
Right.
Certainly better than the Porsche I don't have. But anyway, he got that, and it was that's so cool. I've always just loved German cars, especially, but particularly 911.
That's interesting.
911s. I would love to own one someday. That'd be super fun. But it was that plus like the American Le Mans Series racing, and we got to go and go to these racetracks and watch these different classes of sports cars, but watching sports just go around the class and the course, and it was so much fun.
That's so funny. My dad and I guess his brothers, my uncles, my grandpa, everybody was into American trucks and American cars, and so like I really had no interest in any of that. What got me into it, and I guess it's still on the American lines, but lowriders is what got me into it. When I was probably around 12 also, I remember my best friend at the time, his mom would take us to the lowrider shows just to go check out cars, and that's what hooked me. And then car audio, I found out about that, and forget it. That was my whole world from then on. And but yeah, now, and my dad could care less about vehicles. He hates working on cars and everything.
How did you get into electrical work specifically? Like, I know you've worked in a few different capacities doing car electrical type work, but like, how'd you get into that?
So that was car audio is what sucked me in. I wanted to know how to recreate that on my own. So as time went on, I started, working whatever jobs as a kid, what I could do, yard work or whatever to get money. And I got my first amp when I worked at Target. It was a clearance amp. It was like a Jensen or something, just a cheapo amp. But I remember asking my dad what a ground was. What does ground mean? Like this thing is saying to run this wire to ground. How do I do that? Like he's like, I don't know. What does that mean? So slowly but surely I figured out how to install an amp. My dad was gracious enough to let me use his truck as a Frankenstein mobile, and I kind of screwed some stuff up, but I fixed it, and then I bought some subwoofers and put them in there, and he could have cared less. But after that, after my friends found out that I installed an audio system, they're like, oh, I want one. And so then I started doing it for friends, and I'd make some mistakes on their vehicles, and I learned from those mistakes. And, then time goes on, I start opening myself up to more electronics for vehicles, like car alarms and lights and whatnot. And then in 2012, I was laid off from the lab, and so I had to get a job, a couple jobs actually, to stay afloat. And so I got a job with a friend installing ignition interlocks. Well, at first I wasn't doing that. I had to get a certification, an ASE certification, so that the state of New Mexico would approve me to do it. So I did that, and man, let me tell you, after I did that, I thought I was hot shit, and I was just electronics installer especial. And then in 2014, Sarah and I moved down here to Rio Rancho, and I was also working at O'Reilly at that time, and they transferred me down here. And I have a friend who I went to high school with, I played in the mariachi group with, and he and I had regained contact with him, and he asked me, I had asked him several times, because he worked for King Kong Customs.
Okay.
That's real big audio. Well, they do custom audio and stuff like that, and that's really what I wanted to do, was the custom car audio. And so I had been bugging him, hey, if you ever have an opening, let me know. I'd love to go work there. Well, he calls me one day, and I got super excited. I was like, no way, it's happening. And he's like, well, not with us, but I have a friend who, they build police cars, and, you might be interested in it. It's along the same lines, and it might be a step in this direction. So if you can do that, then, maybe we can talk about getting you in here. And I was like, all right, let's try it. So I went down and talked to those guys, and my first day I realized I don't know shit about electronics. What they were doing was so impressive compared to what I had done in my past. But through that experience, I had to get a couple more certifications, and I learned so much. And I can say that I'm a master 12-volt electronics guy now. But yeah, I learned all about hiding wires, about how the proper way to run wires, how to connect wires. I learned soldering. I learned so much from those guys, and I'm so grateful. And if it wasn't for the pay, I'd probably still be there. Unfortunately, it doesn't pay what I make, or even close for that matter. So, but that was definitely my favorite job ever. Maybe second to this one. I don't know. It's a close call.
The interviewing, right? Is what you're talking about.
What?
Your favorite job?
Oh no. This isn't a job. This is fun. But to take it all back, I wanted to bring up the electives for homeschool, because I thought maybe, I don't know, for whatever reason, I thought in my head that maybe your dad being a car guy, one of your electives was auto shop or something like that. But did you guys ever work on cars together outside of him just taking you to the races, or how did you learn about them?
Me, like when I was in high school, he had to have to change my own oil, and he taught me how to do that.
Okay.
Like he would do that kind of thing himself. He very seldom take his car to a mechanic for any service.
That's great.
So that's just kind of the way he approaches things, and he's pretty meticulous. Probably more meticulous than I am. Very quality oriented, but he'd do the kind of thing where he'll every evening be reading on a thing for weeks or days before he'll take it on, but then he'll go and do it and figure it out.
Interesting.
I tend to be a little more, well, by comparison, caution to the wind. I also have a brother who's like doesn't get it and just like dives elbow deep. Like, bro, like not okay. I want it done the right way. But I'm also not afraid to like pull up a few YouTube videos, read some forums. I'm like, okay, I can figure this out and wing it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. I never even knew who your dad was, and I only found out about him because of his car, the car that he would drive to work that I want so bad.
Was that the WRX at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would ask everybody, do you know whose car that is? Like, I want to talk to this guy. Who is this? I even went as far as sending him a couple emails that he never responded to, and I get it. Like,
he wants to hold on to it for now. He was talking the other day about trying to get it going again. But,
good. I hope he does, because that's a great car.
Yeah, and I relayed your offer to help him with that timing system. But,
I'd be glad to.
Yeah.
Video games.
Yeah.
Talk to me about some video games. What are you playing now? What do you like to play? What have you played in the past?
So I have this idea. I didn't get to play video games in high school.
Didn't get to.
No. Parents were very much against that.
Wow, really?
Like, I go outside and play. And I respect that now.
Oh, totally.
I went off the deep end in college and like definitely abused that, learning how to exercise some discipline. So anyway, that was I think I've since learned to exercise discipline, limit my time, and just be careful that it doesn't become all consuming. But
well, that's great, because touching trees and grass and smelling fresh air is a lost art. So
yes, I mean, not to talk about something else other than what you asked about, but the growing up, and my parents built their own house.
Wow.
I was like starting when I was 10 or so. They bought a piece of land out kind of end of El Dorado near Lamy, and built the house. My dad designed it and built it himself.
Wow.
And he eventually became a general contractor, and that's what he did before he came back to New Mexico.
That's awesome.
And so he wanted to always build, custom homes. And so he did. But from that, instead of playing video games growing up, I would be using like spare materials, and we would build a fort, and like.
Oh, that's so cool.
Got into airsoft a little bit in high school, and
yeah.
Anyway, so that was part of that experience. But anyway, in college, I had friends that got to play. We had some close friends. They were given like an N64, and so we'd have like sleepovers.
Yeah, buddy.
They'd bring it over, and we'd play Smash Bros. Remember GoldenEye, like you know what I'm talking about.
I have it right over there.
And then there was another one called Perfect Dark.
Oh yeah, I remember Perfect Dark. Yep.
Yeah. So those were like the three, and then
nice.
they had a WWE wrestling game that was also like stupid fun. But those are so much fun.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
You're preaching to the choir, buddy. I have that. I have an N64 right over there with GoldenEye in it right now.
So fun.
Yeah.
Then I finished like late high school. My parents broke down, and we got us a Wii. I got a Wii for sports, and anyway.
Yeah.
Today, I have a PC, and I built it for the purpose of playing games. That was a request I made of my wife mid-COVID, and that was a good choice. Maybe she regrets it, but I had to exercise some of that discipline I thought I had mastered. I have this idea that I have like the top 10 games I've played in all time, and I think probably around like below number 5, it's kind of murky, and I can't really tell you. It's been a little bit of time since I've played it last, but I think my favorite game of all time was probably The Witcher 3. Like,
I'm not familiar with it.
okay, check it out.
Okay.
If that's the kind of thing you'd be interested in. So RPGs, like first person and third person stuff, not so much like turn-based tactics. I'm just really not very good at. I've tried a few, and I'm having to like do more reading than playing, and I'm still just getting wrecked. It's not fun. I don't know. So there's that. Probably another one that's in the top that I've played recently, top 10, would be Jedi Survivor. Awesome. One of the ones I'm really enjoying right now, and I've actually played quite a bit. I haven't got into a whole lot of online games, but one of the ones I'm really enjoying playing and really enjoy is Titanfall 2. If you haven't checked that one out, that was awesome. I liked Horizon Zero Dawn. That was pretty sweet. Skyrim, of course, is really good. Although
I've heard great things about Skyrim.
You mod it, and then you spend more time trying to like mod it and fix the mods that break the things than you actually spend playing it. So at this point, like, I don't know, I want to tinker. I want to figure out how, like, I want to like optimize everything. And so,
Sure.
I just got to tell myself to not try playing Skyrim because that's what happens, and then I just spend the day grumpy because I break it.
So you've switched your gaming from consoles to PC.
Mm-hmm.
Is it more of a comfort, or what drove that?
Well, PC has some utility as well, so
Okay.
you check emails and it's just nice to have a computer for
You're just
lots of different tasks.
multifunctioning.
And if I just had a console, I probably wouldn't have a computer. So
Okay.
just like a smartphone. Yeah. Anyway, so I use it for that purpose. It's got a few different purposes.
Okay. Nice.
But
Well, yeah, I think we've had this conversation before, but I'm so terrible at games. Like, I can't. My wife won't play with me because she gets so frustrated because I'm so bad. But her and my brother played Resident Evil 5 repeatedly. They beat it on every skill level and everything. Like, it's a cool game. Like, I love to watch. I'll sit there and watch her play Assassin's Creed or God of War or...
yeah, I've enjoyed those. Well, I haven't played God of War, but I've enjoyed most of the Assassin's Creed games I've played.
Really? Dude, the new God of Wars are freaking amazing.
I know, like when I'm
good.
like shopping around and just looking at whatever the deals are, you see sometimes the tag that says Game of the Year. I'm like, that probably means it's pretty good.
So good.
But
yeah, I'll watch them like their movies, but my problem is there's too many buttons. I grew up with 2 buttons on a Nintendo. Like, you can't stick me with a controller that has 20 buttons already on it, and then each button has 4 or 5 functions.
Yeah.
And you got to remember like where each function is in a split second while you're playing this. It's way too much for me, so I just sit and watch.
there's a learned skill, and some of that's transferable. But yeah.
Well, I to be completely honest, I don't have time. I've got way too much shit going on to sit down and play games. I wish I did have more time, but when I do find time, I turn on my N64 and I play some Mario or some some GoldenEye, and
That's good.
yeah, you have to. Tell me about your wife. How did you meet your wife? I'm curious based on your homeschool past, and did you have those same like lack of social skills and social cues, and how did you meet your wife? I know it's a very loaded question. I'm sorry,
there's
but
a few questions embedded there.
Yeah.
You're asking if I wasn't permitted to date in high school.
okay.
I tried to quickly compensate for that once I started dating. Not that it went well.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't know, I was also pretty serious, and so like I didn't just like start dating for the purpose of dating. I was like, when I started dating, I was looking for something serious at the time,
Okay.
and that was always the case. I was still young and stupid, and I'm still young and stupid. But
Hey, we all are, buddy.
less stupid than I was at the time. Moving towards answering your question about how I met Emily, when I finished my first year of college, and my brother, who had just graduated high school at the time, he called me one day in the spring before the semester was over and said, "Hey, I'm going to take a gap year and not go to school right away, and I found this job at this wilderness camp up in middle of nowhere, Colorado.
Uh-huh.
The middle of somewhere really cool, Colorado, but just like not in like major cities.
Yeah.
Major cities. Do you want to go work this summer job with me at this summer camp? I'm like, sure, why not? Sounds like a good time. Anyway, so we just kind of the way things worked. He and I both we had to get a wilderness first aid certification before we could go, and so what I think the way it worked is like I finished my semester, graduated. I finished my semester, and then the following weekend I was supposed to like start work. He and I were supposed to start work, and like it was. So anyway, finished the last semester, got all my stuff back to my parents' place, and then he and I went up the next weekend. I stayed with a friend in Colorado Springs, and it just happened that there was a course offering for this certification at the school I had gone to. So went back the next weekend, left from Colorado Springs, drove through over Cottonwood Pass and Buena Vista to Taylor Park, Colorado, where this company was located. And anyway, we pulled up at this camp, which was, again, like kind of middle of nowhere. It's like 7 miles from the nearest cell signal, up in 10,000 feet, right next to the Continental Divide.
Damn.
Beautiful, just gorgeous place. It's terrible. Tell your friends. Too crowded already. Anyway, we drove up and like they had just done like staff orientation for some of the new staff and continuing or returning staff, and so like they pull up out of this old 90s Toyota 1500 T1500 or something like
T100?
that. T100, one of those old Toyotas, and these 3 young girls about my age jump out of the back, and Emily's among them, and she's just like just drop dead gorgeous. And they're like, oh, hi, yeah, nice to meet you. And then we'll walk you over to where your cabin's going to be for the summer, and you can go move your stuff in. And so we both get back in the car. My brother and I get in the car, close the door, and look at each other. Dibs on Emily. Anyway, that was obviously before we knew anything about her, but anyway, she's just she was very cool, very, very impressive. She was one of the senior staff at that point in time, and she had at that point a Knowles semester under her belt, and had she was a wilderness first responder. She had all these certifications and accolades, and she was just an incredibly hard worker. I mean, she's drop dead gorgeous and incredibly kind. So,
Is she older or younger than you?
She's about a year and a half older than I am.
Okay.
But anyway, Jake and I didn't like push that at all. I didn't want to kind of muddy those waters, and I didn't know if she would be interested in me at all. She graduated college in 3 years, and so she had just graduated. I had just finished my first year away, and so it was like, I have no shot. But anyway, I had an opportunity. Okay, so there's this wilderness camp. It's like a faith-based camp, but it's not. They allow groups to kind of choose your own adventure. They'll host any kind of groups. There was like college freshman orientation groups. There was like church groups from different parts of the country that wanted to host groups. They could either do their own programming, or the camp would provide programming for them. Again, choose your own adventure. But
okay.
There's this group based out of Texas. This maybe I shouldn't say the name, but there's this dads and daughters group, and so it's this kind of club that would have their dads take for their daughter's 16th year, like a wilderness backpacking trip kind of thing. And so they would come up, and we would do things like whitewater rafting and rock climbing, and do a backpacking trip. Most times we had a challenge course that was on the camp property, and so we would facilitate the challenge course for them. So that was what the week was about. But the backpacking trip is kind of like the big event, and we often for staff at the time, or for campers at the time, would do what we call a sunrise peak ascent. So on your backpacking trip, you usually do 1 or 2 nights. But if we do that, you generally want to hike and do a peak ascent. And so you start by getting up at 2 a.m, well before sunrise, and start hiking to make your last ascent to the peak. And we didn't have any 14ers like in our immediate vicinity, but we had some high 13s that we were summiting. And if you've ever done that, like it's generally there's like not boulders, but there's like rock, which is like little rock, and then like maybe as big as a basketball you call rock, and then boulders obviously are kind of self-explanatory.
Right.
The intermediate size is called talus, And so you can imagine anything between boulders and rock is talus.
Okay.
And there's these fields of just that, which are just kind of everywhere, and you stab rock to rock, and so sometimes you're off trail. There's no vegetation because you're above tree line on your last part of the ascent, and so there's some skill that one has to have going through this. But again, the people who are coming to us, even if they're coming from sea level or near sea level, the people who are inclined to come and go to that camp starting at 10,000 feet and going up, they're going to have some skill in hiking, or we'll teach them what they need to know, or take them on trails. There's some places out there where there's like a literal trail. You just walk the trail, and you can make it pretty mild. We would choose based on the skill level of the groups. We would pick a skill. Anyway, we had a big group. We actually had a couple of large groups in camp at the time, and so we were having to get creative in terms of which peaks. Anyway, so we broke up this dads and daughters group, and it's like these wealthy dudes and their daughters from I think Dallas. And so there's like a lot of peacocking that these dads are doing. It made it really obnoxious. Some of the guys were actually pretty helpful and were quite experienced with camping and had all the gear. Like they raided REI right before their trip, and it was like a pissing contest with these other dads, like trying to show off in front of the daughters.
Sure.
And then some of the guys were just doing that and had no skill and no ability to help, but we're still trying anyway. It was a little bit annoying. Emily was the senior guide on this trip, and I was the junior guide helping her on this trip, and this one other staffer who was just kind of temporary staff, that kind of backfilling. Anyway, so we go to just like the trip is going okay. Like it's not great. We're in an area that we haven't really guided before, but we know how to read a map, and we know how to do this. We know what we're doing. We'll be fine. And Emily is very experienced. She'd done a Knowles semester where she spent 3 months rock climbing, backpacking, and
damn, that's crazy.
Across, did a month-long backpacking trip across Utah.
Wow.
Anyway, she knows what she's doing is my point. But we start our sunrise ascent, and it's maybe at this point 3 a.m, and we're cutting diagonally across this kind of talus field or on a trail. There's like a deer trail that we're walking along, and it's dark, and there's this one older guy among the rest who was like, maybe he was like sleep deprived or he was panicked. There could have been so many different things going on, but he basically had like a panic attack, and he was like with his 16-year-old daughter in tow. This dude in his like late 50s was like in Emily's face, like shouting at her at 3 a.m. on the side of this hill about how she didn't know what she was doing, and accused her of like getting them lost, and he was going to get them all killed. And anyway, I got in the dude's face and like basically calmed him down and told him, sorry, you gotta like, chill the fuck out and go away.
Go away.
Anyway, then was helping Emily. She was like broken down and in tears. And anyway, that event, just because I stood up for her in that scenario, that was like what gave me my shot.
Nice. Good man.
So anyway, like from that point on, like there's just like lots of flirting between the two of us, and it's kind of like we're be professional because you're still working, but like really flirting with each other, and like maybe a couple weeks of that, and then anyway, a couple weeks later, my brother and I were supposed to go mountain biking, and I was in the main lodge brushing my teeth before we went out that morning, and my brother came up to me and he said, "So, you gonna ask Emily out or what? Because if you don't, you're gonna miss your shot." Apparently, I'd missed all the hints, and so
hey man,
so I put my toothbrush down and I went and asked her out right then.
You're preaching to the choir. I'll continue. I'll tell you in a second.
But anyway, I went and asked her out, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's great. Well, so on that note, when I met my wife, my brothers and I went to a hookah lounge downtown Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Just to blow off some steam for a night, just hang out at a hookah lounge. And we were smoking a hookah, and at the table next to us was 2 or 3 girls. And so I was sitting here. It was like a long bench seat, sort of. The one girl was sitting here, and then my brother was sitting right next to me. And so this girl keeps looking, and I'm like, oh, she's got to be looking at my brother. Like, I'm old. She's his age. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I just went about my business or whatever. So I had my other friend with me on this side of me, and she leans over and tells him, she said, "Tell your friend to stop being a chicken shit," or something like that. and prior to that, I had my brother get up and go dance with her. I was like, bro, she was checking you out, go dance with her. And she like had no interest in him whatsoever. And so after she told my friend to tell me that, I was like, chicken shit. I didn't even know. And it's so funny that you say that, miss all the hints, because she was hinting at me like crazy, and I was oblivious to the fact.
Yeah.
So, your wife, how long after you guys started dating did you ask her to marry you?
We got married a year and a half after we met or started dating.
Oh, nice. And was kids always sort of a thought in there, or did you plan for them, or was that sort of a...
Yeah, we did plan for them.
Oh, cool.
I mean, we were having pretty serious conversations at that point in time. She also has 3 younger brothers. We both came from families of 4, and
Wow.
like large families and somewhat close.
Small world.
Kind of similar spread too, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it was just very clear as something we wanted. So.
And is 2 your limit, or are you guys still going?
No, we'd like to have more.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we have our 4-year-old her name is Eleanor. She's wonderful. And then Solomon is a little terror. He's also wonderful, but he just into everything, high energy. He will be 2 in July. So anyway, they're really great.
Cool.
A good source of joy, but not without challenge.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't have human children, but my
I understand.
my 4-legged children are also a challenge, not probably to the same extent, but they're fucking expensive. So, as all kids are.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We've been at it for a while now, so I'm going to go ahead and call it now. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come over here and have the conversation with me. And
My pleasure, James.
you are incredible to me because of everything we just discussed, and your commanding respect presence, and I really appreciate working with you, and I appreciate your friendship, and
Likewise, James.
Again.
Appreciate you. Thanks, James.
thank you. Bye-bye.